What we're also seeing is that Japan is now rapidly remilitarizing. They're signing more agreements with Australia and other nations, okay? They're building more weapons. This is all being encouraged by the United States as a deterrent to China. Again, this is really important. America does not want to destroy China. It does not want to humiliate China. It wants to control China. Because the Chinese economy is still very strong and powerful, and America wants to make sure that the Chinese are buying more US dollars. Okay? So it is entirely possible what's going to happen is that the Chinese will have no choice but to buy from America, okay? Especially energy. The entire Western Hemisphere belongs to America, and you want to trade with the Western Hemisphere, then you need to sign a trade deal with America. Okay? What America is also doing that's really important is that it's planning to take over Greenland. Okay? By taking over Greenland, you're blocking access. China and Russia cannot access the Western Hemisphere, okay, through the Arctic. You're also seizing control over the Arctic, okay? And there are lots of minerals and oil in the Arctic as well, okay? The Strait of Gibraltar is also another strategic choke point, and America has signed a deal with Morocco to enhance more cooperation. Okay? So I can see what America is doing is when they mean strategic interest, prioritizing strategic interest, what they mean is exerting control over the world's choke points so that they can control global trade. Okay? They're not going to control the entire ocean because it's much too big, but if they control certain choke points like the Middle East, and the Strait of Malacca, that's probably enough. Okay? The point is to get China to submit. The point is to control China, not to destroy China. All right, this is important because if you want to become a major power in the world, you need to trade effectively. So Russia has something called the North-South corridor. As you can see, it runs through Iran, okay? Iran is very important for the Russian North-South corridor. And that's why the United States is attacking Iran. Okay? And that's why the United States is not going to ever stop attacking Iran. Because as long as Iran is at peace, Russia can trade with the world. But if Iran is being destroyed, there's too much war, this entire region is blocked off from both Russia and China. Okay? Russia has something called the Belt and Road Initiative. As you can see, okay, from a map, the center of the Belt and Road Initiative is, of course, Iran. All right? If China wants to access Africa, Europe, the Middle East, it has to go through Iran. Or it goes through the sea, the Strait of Malacca. But as I already said, the next step for America is to close off the Strait of Malacca as well to Chinese trade. Then where do you go? Well, then you go over to the Western Hemisphere, but that's American territory, okay? Yes, you can trade with Russia. You can trade with Russia. You can do that, but it's not enough for your economy. Doesn't make sense. Right now, China gets about 20% of its oil from Russia. Maybe Russia can provide 30% or 40% at most. That's very optimistic. But where are you going to get the other 50%, 60%, okay? Your options are very limited. If Iran is at war, can't give you any oil, then you're forced to buy from the United States. Okay? If you're forced to buy from the United States can set the price. It can set terms. It can dictate terms to you. And what the United States will say, you have to buy in US dollars. Okay? And that saves their economy. Right? Does this make sense, guys? This is not a hard idea to understand. This is exactly what it says in the US national security strategy. Okay? So, in many ways, you can make the argument that what's happening around the world right now, it's all an American policy of containing China, where in these flags are US military bases. As you can see, China is completely surrounded by US military bases in Japan, in South Korea, in Taiwan, even in Indonesia and Malaysia. China, Philippines. China's completely surrounded, okay? And this is it, the Strait of Malacca. This is a major choke point. And as you can see, it's not that hard for America to cut off that choke point, right? You see how much trade goes through the Strait of Malacca? You can see how many US bases are here. And you can see a lot of this trade goes to the Middle East, but hey, guess what? The Middle East is at war right now, so no more oil, no more energy, no more LNG from the Middle East. So you might go to Angola, but this is very important. The Americans have recently announced a naval blockade in the Indian Ocean, okay? So that's kind of your route as well. So if you're China, yes, you could rely on Russia, but you see how little this is, okay? There's too little trade between Russia and China, and you could build it up, but it's going to take you 10, 20 years' time. And what do you do for the next 10 years, right? Your people need food to eat. You need energy to fuel your factories. And so for the next 10 years, you have no choice but to work with the United States. And that's what Trump means by negotiating from a position of strength. Because you can set terms. You can force China to accept whatever terms you want. And quite honestly, if you just look at this map, there's very little that China can do about it, okay? There's this war in the Middle East. There's also this war in Russia, which also absorbs a lot of Russian energy. So Russia doesn't have that much resources to spare to China anyway. But America does, the Western Hemisphere does, okay? Because the Western Hemisphere is at peace. So as long as the Western Hemisphere maintains a fortress, okay? Meaning no one can attack the Western Hemisphere, then the Western Hemisphere can continue to supply resources to the world at war. So this is what the war is about, guys, okay? It's about creating conflict in the world so the United States can maintain its empire. And the way it maintains its empire is by maintaining its control over global trade, okay? And the idea is America in the future will provide the world with energy, resources, weapons, and financing. Meaning we will actually lend you the money to buy this stuff as well. And what do we call this stuff? US dollars, okay? And so this worked really well in the 1950s under something called the Marshall Plan. Okay? The Marshall Plan. Same idea where America made products and it lent money to Europe to buy products from America. Same concept here where in the future, the world is at war, people are poor, but it's okay because America will lend you money to buy energy, resources, and weapons from America. Okay? And American factories will go up. America will be great again. Make America great again. All right? Okay. But for this plan to fully work out, America needs three things, okay? The first thing that it needs to do is create a national draft. Does that make sense, guys? Because you need soldiers in order to maintain America's core interests, right? So whichever nation is defying you, you go attack, right? The goal is for Russia and Europe to constantly fight each other. The goal is for China and Japan to constantly fight each other. You need Iran to constantly fight with the GCC and Israel, okay? So you have these three major conflicts around the world. But if there's any nation that's at peace, well, then you have to create conflicts, okay? Maybe in Africa. You also want to control the Western Hemisphere, so you need soldiers to go and conquer nations that defy you. Okay, so the first thing that you need is a national draft. All right. The second thing that you need is something called continuity of agenda. What does this mean? It means like now that you have this plan in motion, you cannot have a change in government, okay? So let's just say they're implementing this plan, and they're doing that right now. In 2028, the Democrats win. Well, that would screw things up, okay? So Trump needs a third term, right? A Trump third term. Because only he can implement this plan and make America great again. Okay? And the third thing that you need is an AI surveillance state. Basically, AI police state. Why? Because again, this plan can only work if the Americans don't rise up and revolt like they did in the Vietnam War. Okay? If you have a national draft in place, if Trump's going for a third term, there's going to be a lot of Americans who are going to protest in the streets, who are going to rebel, right? You can't have that happen. They'll screw things up. Therefore, you need an AI surveillance state in order to help them see the light, right? So, ICE, guys, okay? ICE. People believe that ICE is being sent to the streets of America in order to catch illegal immigrants. The problem with this is that you don't need ICE. You just need cooperation from the state authorities, okay? What ICE is really doing is basically creating conditions for a police state. It's normalizing or making common the idea of armed soldiers patrolling the streets of America in all the major cities. All right? And the reason why we think this, or we can suspect this, is look at their budget, man. Look at this budget. Before, the budget was kind of stable. Then, boom, it goes up to $90 billion. That's a lot of money, okay? That's almost like a new national police force that is only obedient to Donald Trump. It's basically Donald Trump's private police force in order to implement his vision, okay?